We're almost into round 2 of the Rugby World Cup of 2025. However, there's a few more games we need to talk about first. We've covered Canada in some detail over on the main channel. We're going to have a go and look at that. Just Squid Rugby.
Yes.
Just like less Squid Rugby,
Yeah.
I suppose, in some ways.
Some Squid Rugby.
We've talked
Not all of
about
it.
Canada quite broadly in terms of the team. We didn't talk specifically about that performance. In a couple of words, how do you sum up Canada's performance there?
Can I stretch it from a couple of words to 3 words?
Please.
Potentially world beating.
Yeah.
Potentially. Because the thing about that game was Fiji got them into a sticky situation in the first half. Well, not a sticky situation, but they made Canada look like they were playing to maybe a 6 out of 10. What are you looking at?
I'm just counting how many words
Okay.
you say. He's supposed to be under a couple.
Okay, yeah, fair
No,
enough.
continue.
Fiji managed to get Canada into a position where they looked a little bit undercooked in the first half. They didn't look at their entire best. And yet, when you were watching that, at no point did you think Canada weren't going to dominate the rest of the game. The whole game, you weren't going, oh yeah, they're going to lose this game. You were instead going, oh, they're saving their best for the second half.
Yeah.
Oh, in the second half, they're going to run out and do exactly what they did. And just pounded Fiji into the ground.
Yeah. It was a Canada team that adapted really well. It was a Canada team that managed to get, in the way we talked about a bit in the other video, their best players into spaces and opportunities to do the things that they do incredibly well. It was a Canada team who looked comfortable, right? Yeah. And I think 4 years ago, they win that game, or 3 years ago, rather, at the last World Cup, they win that game by 30 instead of 60.
Yeah.
I think that was like a really notable performance, was the way in which they went out. And like they put the ball out for half time, you know, they've been out of full time when they could have kicked on and scored more points. Like that was them not at 100%.
Yeah, they have another gear, I think.
Yeah, the really telling thing that Kevin Ruwe said afterwards, that they are going to be looking so much at details, because he said that he felt the team was nervous at the start because they were thinking about the World Cup. They listened a lot apparently to the pressure and people picking them up, and it's something he'd done, is like people saying like a lot of people take you seriously as contenders here.
Yeah,
and so they arrived at the tournament. Yeah, they arrived at the tournament a little bit like, oh, okay, right, there's pressure on us. And he said, actually, what I've got to do is take them out of that, take them away from that, take them, disconnect from all of that, forget about the pressure, forget about the external stuff, and only look at details.
Yeah.
So how good can they be when they like straighten up some of the details, which will probably be like ruck and lines of running and stuff, and we'll see where they go from there. Fiji, on the other hand,
yes.
So playing under Eoin Cunningham, there was a limited amount of rugby they managed to play before this tournament, so we've seen relatively little of them. The interesting thing is, Cunningham with Wales, of the history as a forwards coach with the Scarlets, was like controversially overlooked when Wayne Pivac took over as Wales coach. He is very much a forwards coach, right? And when he came with Wales, he did a brilliant job of suddenly their scrum was dominant, their set piece was dominant, their forwards were excellent. And slowly but surely, they didn't add a rest of their game, and other teams caught up to what they were doing in the set piece. And it became more and more of an issue. It feels like with Fiji, you felt like it was going to go one of two ways, right? It was either going to be, oh, brilliant, he's going to sort out their problems, or he's going to kind of bring them down a bit and like make them slightly more conservative and make them a team like Wales were.
Yeah.
And I think it feels a bit more like the second half. And Fiji are still looking to play from everywhere.
Sure.
But I don't, from a kind of structural point of view, everything feels very conservative.
I think Eoin Cunningham will be a great coach for Fiji as long as he doesn't stay there beyond 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a lot he is doing and can do to improve Fiji. But once they get to that point, I don't think he's a natural fit for what can he do to make them express themselves and make them world beaters. I think he's a great man to make them competitive on the world stage, you know.
In terms of being physical enough to front up to Canada, I think Fiji did a solid enough job of that.
Yeah.
Which is something they probably wouldn't have done a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But they scored the one try from long range, which was a brilliant, spectacular
Let's talk
try.
about that. Kolara Lamani off the bench was excellent, by the way. It's like such an energetic, live wire of a player. I think she's so exciting to watch. And
seemingly no relation to the other Fijian 9 called Lamani as well, which is very surprising.
Weird that, isn't it? But I love the way where it comes from. Very unconventional. When it looks like they're trying to exit here. Tove at 10 goes for a quite unconventional crossfield kick with Sophie de Goody marking her right foot. Ends up landing perfectly in the winger's hands. But the thing is, like, a lot's been made of this kind of fluky scenario, but that's the sort of thing Fiji love at any level of rugby, is get into unstructured scenarios where you can then find this. And like they kind of accidentally find a boot.
I kind of feel like there was a lot of playing to structure for Fiji.
Yeah.
And I think they played everything out the back and they played everything expansive, but they're playing within structure. And you see when that structure disappears a little bit, and without wanting them to become France, but like how much better they looked and how much more exciting, and how you kind of the whole way think it's going to result in a try, despite the fact they haven't scored one yet that day.
Yeah. But super exciting to watch them play. And playing up against Canada first is a bit of a stitch-up.
Yeah.
And you'd imagine they will play their best rugby of this tournament going into Scotland and Wales. In the next
They'll
2
play
weeks.
their best rugby in the tournament against Wales.
Yeah.
This is how Fiji teams play.
Yeah.
We all know it. It's fine. And also the history of Cunningham and Wales and everything else. Is there in the background.
It's a lot riding on it.
Should we move on?
Yeah.
Shall we talk about Samoa v Australia?
Yes. Let's do it.
We were both there.
Yeah.
You were there from the start.
Yeah.
I arrived 2 hours before kickoff, but then didn't get in until about 20 minutes, half an hour in. Huge thanks to Stephen, who watched the channel, who thankfully let me leave my bag in his car. Enormously appreciated because they wouldn't let me in because my bag was too big, despite getting into the stadium beforehand. And when I tried to go in the wrong gate initially, they let me through with no issue, but then one guy had a big issue with my bag. Whole thing, it's fine. It happens, it's fine. I was trying to carry explosives in, so maybe that was right to flag that. I wasn't. I'm just talking now. But yeah, so I arrived, I missed most of the points scored in the game, missing the first 25 minutes.
I rocked up just as the Samoan national anthem was starting with my A4-sized bag and looked at them and thought, that's cool, this bag's cool, this is going to be a fun game of rugby. And immediately, after about 5 minutes or so, right, Australia went 2 tries up. Yeah. You arrived in the stadium after about half an hour and said, okay, I'm so sorry, like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, no, it's all good. I'm glad that you're here. How are you? Are you okay? Because, we'd travelled to Manchester separately from Sunderland.
You've gone back home.
To Nottingham.
I stopped in Middlesbrough overnight.
Yeah. And we both found our separate routes to Manchester and saw each other there. I was like, oh, how are you doing? He was like, yeah, it's fine. So what's happened in the game? Like, what's the score? What's happening? I was like, oh, it's 34-0.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, okay. It's one of those games.
Okay.
But I think that probably didn't tell you what the story was. You've watched the full game back now, and I think you now have a good read on what it was like. And as I say, Australia ran away with it, right? But in the stadium, and maybe exclusively in the stadium, the vibes were very, very different. As I don't think we have been on a crowd as one-sided as that before in a rugby game, where all of the Wales and Scotland fans who had turned up for the double header later on, who, there's always that thing where you exchange glances of like, you're going down later today. And then it's like, oh, you've got to sit for another game beforehand where we have all decided collectively that we're the biggest Samoa fans ever. And it was brilliant. The stadium was so behind everything Samoa did. When
Australia scored twice in the first 5 minutes, it swings instantly from like 70% Samoa to 100%, apart from the Australians, so like I saw a massive collection of Caitlin House's family together. There were like 7 or 8 of them over. One of them had like a vintage 2003 Wallaby jersey that they got the word House 15 print on the back of, which I love. Like, I love that as like defacing your old favourite jersey.
Hell yeah.
Because, in pride of your daughter or niece or whoever. But yeah, like, there was a pretty decent number of Wallaroos fans in. Literally everyone else was overwhelmingly cheering for literally everything Samoa did.
Yeah.
And this Samoa team they're the most proper rugby team I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
There's been talk before this tournament. They were doing most of their training in a church rather than a gym because it was the space they had available to them. And there was certainly something holy about the way a few of them played. And look, there was something very like, I get they're a church team rather than a pub team, but like that was the vibe a little bit.
I did say they were a pub team at certain points because it felt a bit thrown together, but they were all loving it.
Yeah.
Right? Because the thing is about this Samoa team is that they very clearly hadn't played international rugby before. They were a team of really good individuals.
Almost all of this team had never played a team of Australia's calibre. And that showed, right? Yeah. And you had a couple of players who really rose to the occasion. You had a couple of them that got better as the game went on.
Yeah.
And you had a bunch of players who slowly bedded into combinations.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of this comes back to the fact that there are issues with the Samoan Union. You've got one of the high-up government officials who's involved with the Samoan Rugby Union, says they don't think women should be playing rugby. And so there's been an underfunding consistently. WXV has helped with that enormously because it's meant they get a base level of number of fixtures, but they're still not getting anything like enough rugby together. And they're not getting a lot of these players released, right, and available and coming together and being able to get time off work and so on else
100%.
to travel over. Especially there's a lot of them based in New Zealand. We spoke to Alice Soper between the 2 games, who obviously is excellent, and we'd love to get on here somewhere while she's in the country. But like mentioning like the number of them she'd played with or knew personally,
or trained with or whatever.
Yeah.
Which was great, and like obviously she very much got behind Samoa. I could hear her cheering from far away in the stands at that point. But yeah, to look a little bit at Samoa, as I say, like there was a bit of pub team vibe to them, but the individuals they had in that team, and once they had like learned to gel by the end of the game, it was crazy the level of improvement we saw like as the game was going on, which is exciting. As I say, like the majority of these players, the highest standard of rugby they've played is against Australia A.
Yeah.
Which, you know, to then go from that to Australia, real Australia, like the full team. I realise Wally's not in frame.
Good day, mate.
Wally's arrived to support the Wallaroos and talk about them. However, a few cult heroes arose as we go through this. The first one that I want to talk about is from the bench, there was a certain player who, once Australia had gone like 28-0 up, right? The Samoan bench came by us to try to do their warm-up, right? And there was one player, it was one of their forwards. I want to say it was John J. Taylor, their replacement second row. It might not have been, but I
it's
think
hard
it was
to tell.
her.
They didn't have numbers on the back or anything. So.
Yeah, and I facially don't recognise him.
Players you haven't seen play that often.
But she just kept going to the crowd at every point and just going like this, like, come on. And the crowd would go wild every time the Samoan bench went past. Even after subs were made and like there was a few injuries in the first half and so on, she just brought the energy all the time. And that felt amazing. It felt like we were in the World Cup now.
Even when she came on, others kept that energy up.
Yeah.
And others kept going, and you kept raising that up. And then even during the Wales game, right? They ran by and she went back to it and she was like hyping the crowd up again.
Yeah.
So it was a long stoppage in the middle and the Samoan team just walked by in front of one of the stands and there was an enormous cheer, which probably confused people watching on TV. Yes. But like they really hyped the crowd up and everyone loved them.
It was brilliant.
It led to such energy, and you had a group of Samoan fans who travelled over as well, or UK based and made down to Manchester. And they brought a lot of energy as well. Yeah. They were really enthusiastic.
So good. Gloria Iono-Saimelu as well at tight head prop.
So
heroic performance.
I want to get onto this. Samoa have, I think, the best attacking structure I've ever seen. Right? So we talked about Canada recently. We've talked about South Africa recently in terms of like inventive plays. Samoa ran, and they ran this about 5 times. My favourite set of like.
We were calling it in the stands, like.
So they would call a 5-person line out. They would leave their tight head in midfield. They would go ball off the top, down to 10, who would hit the prop, who would charge in, at which point the other prop would wrap around and they'd hit off to 10 again, who'd hit the other prop. And this was their game plan. And they kept coming back to this, was like, both props, smash it up, just get the biggest guys up the middle. And I became an enormous fan of this. And I was looking out every time someone had a line of like, where are they?
Yeah.
Are both props are in midfield? We're in for it again.
When they changed the props and did exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and it remained exactly the same game plan.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was like 10 to prop smashes over the gain line, 10 to prop smashes over the gain line. Oh shit, the props are both on the floor now, what do we do?
And as soon as the hooker throws in, her just going like, brilliant, I'll have a rest. I'll go edge.
Yeah.
All right, good luck, lads. You know,
Yeah.
enjoy yourselves. Other standout performances for Samoa, we will come on to Australia very quickly. Ana Afui at 9, I thought was outstanding.
Oh, brilliant.
Made
really
a load
good.
of line breaks and knew when to up the tempo. Yeah. And she knew that playing against a team like the Wallaroos, you have to try and stretch them a little bit. Yeah. And she took a few risks. Sure, she got turned over a few times. But I think in a game like that, I really respect a 9 who just grabs it by the scruff like that. And like gives it a good go.
Every promising attack Samoa had, pretty much, more or less, was her just like keeping her foot on the throat of Australia and managed to manage things. It's a terrible sentence, but just like keeping it going and going and going. I thought she was outstanding. I feel.
Lutia Cole Almua as well on the right wing.
Yep.
I thought in the first half in particular had made a few really nice breaks. Managed to cut inside and get through a little bit. Joanna Fanaliko on the left wing as well. I highlighted before the tournament, she was playing 13 for the pre-tournament as a really exciting talent for them. I think when they didn't always manage to get the ball out wide to these two was the issue. So, but when they did, those two looked so talented.
I think, obviously, first thing first, they need to pass to both props and get them over the game line. And then they can start looking at the wingers. Then they can pass to other people.
That's true.
But this Samoa team are going to be drastically better by the end of the tournament than they are now.
They will.
And in some ways that's a problem. They should manage to do that beforehand.
Yeah.
But I think we'll see their style of play expand beyond just give it to the
They've got the Red
prospects
Roses coming up. Like, how good's that for them?
Yeah.
Like, how
It's amazing.
brilliant opportunities that they get.
Terrifying,
Yeah.
awful,
But they will be so up for it.
Yeah.
Like, if I wasn't at the game, there's a part of me that would be going like, oh, it could be dangerous. It could be, such a mismatch. But having gone to the game and realised the energy they were bringing in the week, in the church they're practicing in, they'll be bouncing and going like, let's take it to him.
Yeah. I also don't think it is dangerous. Those are physically incredibly gifted players who just hadn't had time together.
Yeah. They won't be nearly as fit as the Red Roses players, but
those are all players who, if you drop them into a PWR for a season and you gave them as much time together as England have had, could be competitive.
Yeah, 100%. And they'll be up for a
but
physical
they've had
challenge.
literally none of the advantages that
Absolutely.
teams like Australia, England have had.
Australia, let's
Yes.
talk about them. First and foremost, right, so a lot of tries scored through the backs.
Yeah.
Desiree Miller picking up a first-half hat-trick. Literally just after you arrived, Desiree Miller scored, and the announcer went like, and that's a hat-trick for Desiree Miller, and you're like,
Okay, fine.
Okay, that's
I put
where
May
we're
Stewart
at.
in my fantasy team. Fine, okay, I've made a mistake here.
Yeah.
I've gone on the other wing.
Couple of standout performances.
Yeah.
And I think the people who feed that speed, so important. One of them, Faitila Maleka at 10, was outstanding. Really put a claim for that jersey, because I think her and Tia Hines are in a bit of an arm wrestle for who takes that at the moment. So that's a really exciting battle. I think she's really put one hand on that.
Selfless, and in a positive way, like boring.
Yeah.
There was very little like taking too much on herself, and it was just allowing of people to unlock
She
things.
starts flat to the line
Yeah.
and lets people move around her.
Yeah.
Like, she's probably not as quick or explosive a lot of the background. Not to say she's not quick, it's just that she plays in a very fast backline, where speed is their USP of that backline. So she goes brilliant. Speed isn't what they need. They don't need me to run at the line. I'm going to let them do that. So I'm going to touch the ball, wait for somebody to run around me, and then flip it back to them. So if you've got G-Fred running that hard line that she's famous for, and Cecilia Smith, who was outstanding, who can peel around the back or run a little dump off, or just run a hard line, or just sit off, right? She trusts her centres to see that around
Look
her.
at the players around you, right? When it's Cecilia Smith, who's outstanding.
Yeah,
superb,
incredible.
Her try is really well taken, the angle she picks, the way you can kind of see it when you watch it back, like the way in which she spots it a bit out and then comes in on that line and like starts running the line long before she's called it as well. Really good. G-Fred, who was herself, had a couple of really good touches.
Quietly brilliant rather than brilliant, but we like that still.
Yeah, May Stewart, who didn't see that much of the ball, but like still an exceptional player on the day. Desiree Miller, who scored a hat-trick. And in the back, Caitlin House, who we'll get onto in a second. But like, when those are the players around you, you don't want your 10 doing too much.
No.
Right? If you're the coach, you want your 10 just giving them the ball and giving them opportunity to run off each other and play. Like,
If your 10 tries to take on too much yourself,
exactly,
or play too much off 9,
Yeah.
right, then it just gives the opposition,
It
especially a
ruins
team like
everything else.
Samoa,
So,
a chance to fly off the line and just get into your ribs.
However, we should talk about Caitlin House.
Yes.
Who probably wouldn't play the match for me.
Yeah.
I thought she was brilliant. M. Chancellor as well, was excellent as ever. Caitlin House is the real deal. She is everything I like in a fullback. Hits great lines, but primarily like positionally, high ball, exceptional, just like very old school. But also the way in which she runs support lines, the way in which she keeps herself involved in the game is one thing that always stands out to me, is the fact that she will like get back involved, she'll pass the ball, she'll get back into a position. She gets back off the ground really quickly.
The fact that she passed the ball to Desiree Miller for a first try.
Yeah.
Like, she's a metre out from the try line. She could score this here. Most 18-year-olds would just dummy and flop over.
The fact she's 18 is outrageous.
And instead she goes, no, we want perfection.
Yeah.
We want a bulletproof attacking plan. So I'm just going to pass it to her.
Yeah.
It looks a bit nicer. It's a bit cleaner. It means that there's no chance of getting held up. It's a 99% try into a 100% try.
Yeah. Just like superb. The whole way through. Just how safe she was. Samoa didn't kick that much ball, but every time they did, she was immediately there in position. And the way in which she's able to link up an attack, she's able to work as both a kind of alternate first receiver or distributor, often comes as the kind of second receiver, and also as a strike runner. I just thought she did everything. I don't think you can ask for any more from a fullback.
Proper fullback.
Do you want a stat?
Hit me.
2 line breaks, 4 line breaks assists, the most in the competition.
Wow.
This weekend. Most combined line breaks and line break assists, and the most line break assists joint. With one of a player who I have forgotten, probably Zoe Harrison or something, who cares.
Sure.
Incredibly impressive performance, I thought, like across the board.
Yeah. Super exciting stuff. Final player I want to pick out for Australia, who I thought was a 10 out of 10, was Piper Duck.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Around the park. At line-out time, hitting breakdowns, and also just general support play and link-up play. I just thought like that she couldn't have done anything more in her position, and just it's so easy to play off a player like her, who is working around the park so tirelessly, and just clearly just listens to a 9 and 10 at every single opportunity.
Just really took the World Cup like a swan to a lake. So, should we move on?
Yeah.
Ireland versus Japan.
Yes.
Now, this is a game with the most obvious turning point I think we'll see in this tournament. So, Ireland started really well. Japan actually were putting some good stuff together in those early stages, then scored 2 superb tries. And then right as it looks like they're about to get back into this, kind of start the second half, Suzuki picks up the ball, is looking to kind of draw one in and then pass to. She has 2 runners coming off her shoulder. If one isn't scoring, the other one is. Instead, a third person pops over the ball and scores. Eve Higgins takes it, sprints 96 metres, goes the distance, scores, takes Ireland pretty much out of sight. Yeah. And you felt like if that try went the other way, if Japan finished that, suddenly it's a really different game. Suddenly I think Japan, I'm not saying they necessarily win it, but they keep that tight and they keep it in and they force Ireland into a bit of scrap. Yeah. Instead it changed the complexion, potentially Ireland's whole World Cup.
Feel for Suki, because she's had a howler there. Yeah. That is one of those where you just sweep it from the deck.
Because that's the thing, like, that's the instinct, isn't it? You go like, she should just pass it off the deck. Yeah. But also she's clearly trying to, she couldn't draw in the first tackler and needs to watch for the second as well. Yeah.
But when you look at the width that Japan have here, then, you know, it's a different story, isn't it? Especially because their build-up play was based around having really good width and running good lines. But that was what Japan generally, I think, brought to this game. That they really played their part, and it was an exciting game where it felt like a bit of just like a kickabout to me. Like, it was kind of the sort of game that we'll watch back in 20 years' time on the World Cup retrospective and be like, that was a banger. Yeah, Ireland much deserving winners, like just seem like the much better team in most facets of the game. But Japan also, as the lower ranked team, just brought a really fun kind of attacking structure to the game. Yeah. I really enjoyed Ina Nagato at 7. Yeah. I thought she really got around the park really well.
Attack and defence.
Yeah.
She got really involved, carried very well, popped up like on shoulders consistently in attack. Yeah. But defensively was the top tackle on the day, made I think 21 tackles, which is not a bad count at all. Yeah. I thought she was excellent.
And also Kamasi Kawamura at 6 was brilliant, both sides of the ball once again. Plays more like a kind of traditional edge forward in attack, but has a really good offloading game.
Is, for fans of the podcast we did in the 1987 World Cup, really reminds me of Miyamoto, their 6.
Oh, yes.
Just like incredibly all action, incredibly dynamic. Are they good? I don't know. But they get stuck in all the time, everywhere, and they're constantly carrying and barreling people over. And you're like, are you technically doing any technical things right? I don't give a shit. Like, you're constantly amongst it.
The amongst it meter is off the scale.
And very rare that a team's 2 best players on the day are the players that score their tries. But I thought very possibly you could say that of Japan. Yeah. I thought Karamura was outstanding and really deserved a try. And then Haruka Hiratsu was exceptional.
She was the best player for Japan.
Japan's best player quite comfortably.
And she probably just is the best player in the Japanese squad, probably, alongside maybe an Otsuka, something like that.
Incredibly skillful, incredibly nuggety. When she carries, she feels like she's an out-and-out crash ball centre. And yet, whenever she's not carrying, you're like, oh, she's so much more than that.
Because I consider her to be just like a ball player. Yeah. You know, a proper baller. Like, she's got such a range of passes on her. And then as soon as she actually sticks her head down and carries through people, I'm like, wait, she's strong as well. Yeah. Surely you can't be both. Especially you say she's not a big centre. She's not like Mata Nonu, who, you know, is a crash ball centre who learned to play the ball.
But it's that, like, Aleph Kelter thing, isn't it? It's that Kieran Williams thing of just getting your head down and not being the biggest player in the world, but just like if you've got the right build and the right shape, you can fire yourself in like a bullet. Yeah. And she really accelerates into contact, and we saw that in her try. Yeah. Like, incredibly well taken.
Yeah, and the Japan attacking shape of this is beautiful as well. Yeah. Them going for 4 pods off the edge, and like if you freeze on here, you have no idea where the ball's going to go to. Yeah. And Suki's pass from the base here is exceptional. Yeah. Getting it across, it's such speed, so difficult to defend.
It's something they've really built on under Mackenzie from the last World Cup, right? Where I think their game plan was high ball speed, but the options are often quite predictable.
Yeah.
It's something that's really come on in the last 3 years, is the way in which they've got like a more expanded range of options, and they're relying on Suzuki and Abe to pick the right passes, rather than necessarily going like, just hit the guy next to the ruck, just hit her, and then eventually we'll open up and Yamamoto or Asuka can do something expansive and more dynamic. And like we saw, Yamamoto come on and put in a brilliant cross kick late on that almost led to a try. And Otsuka, I thought, had a really good game of just like consistently finding the right options, but they're playing far more off 9 now than they used to. And when they do play off 9, they're giving the 9 more freedom to pick their own passes and express themselves, rather than just going, just pace, just carry.
I do think playing off 9 suits Otsuka quite well, though, because it means she gets to challenge defenders a little bit more. And I don't know, that's quite nice when you've got a slick player like Hirotsu outside her. And sure, there'll potentially be some of the further outside backs who'll be wanting a little bit more ball, but I think that playing off 9 allows them to actually like challenge the defensive line a little bit more earlier on. I really thought that Komachi Imakugi on the left wing was a really exciting player whenever she got the ball.
There's something about her, isn't there?
Yeah, just a typical Japanese winger. Like, it's one of my favourite brands of player, I'm realising, the older I get, is the kind of Yoshikazu Fujita, Kengi Fukuoka mould of like small Japanese wingers who will just dance around you.
Covers the ground incredibly fast. Always incredibly alert.
Usually wear scrum caps.
Loves a bouncing ball. Loves to pounce on a bouncing ball.
Yeah. But no, she was super exciting. And Japan, as I say, really played the part in this game. However, the team that romped away, that were by far the deserving victors, were Ireland.
Yes.
As you say, Eve Higgins getting that defensive read and the intercept and going all the way. That was just one of the highlights in what was an exceptional game for her.
I think it was, the highlight. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But she was outstanding in that game. The try that she set up for Fiona Toots was phenomenal. Just the way that she slides through the defence. It's proper like knife through butter shit, this. But she's just so unbelievably balanced in a game like this. And again, it's funny because we were just praising her opposite number, but it really, really suits her in the way that she likes to play. And the Irish backline generally just had so much freedom.
Was excellent. Really, really
They've actually swapped those two round from the way they used to play. With Dalton, typically I thought of as a bit of a crash centre, but I think
really working at 13.
I think it says more about how Scott Bemand likes to play now.
I also think
likes
there's
to play a bit
something
wider
in the way that teams are defending this World Cup, which is much less aggressive. Well, there's sort of like a more aggressive push, and then there's more space in the wide channels, right?
Yeah.
So you look at Alona Mar making those 2 huge carries in the opening game, and it's about like getting someone who can carry and make yardage in that 13 channel is like a really open opportunity. So I think that's something that really works for her. It's like you're no longer looking, I think, for someone that can make a clean break in the 13 channel, but someone that can carry in the 13 channel.
Somebody who's a good runner with the ball. That's what she is. Whereas Eve Higgins is an all-rounder. That when she gets space, she's phenomenal. Right? She's more of a traditional 13 in women's rugby. That you see somebody who like is good on the outside break and so on. But the thing is, we're still seeing that in the 12 channel, and she's also being used a bit more of a distributor now as well. So I think that's a really exciting axis, and clearly Scott Bemand is trying to stretch those two and say like, right, how many skills can we get you both running? And typically, you would say that those two would play the other way around, but I think it's really, really worked, them trying to open up a little bit more, having 13 be the hard runner of the two.
The other thing is, right, that every team swaps the centres around all the time. So you're kind of playing both at all times.
It doesn't restrict either of them.
Fiona Toot really impressed me as well. I thought was excellent. One thing I do want to pull up, right? O'Brien kicked quite a lot in the first 5-10 minutes, and then really settled down. And kicked much less in the second half.
That surprised me.
The second half, the first half even.
It was weird watching Ireland play beyond 3 phases.
One thing is, we're used to Ireland kick more with the ball, or an early phase count, certainly, than any other team in women's rugby. Fascinating that they didn't come into this game plan with a clear, set mindset of, we are going to kick less ball because it's Japan, and we think the way to beat them is to blow things open and play phase count and tire them out, right? Which worked. Because they were playing their normal game plan for the first 10-15 minutes. And then they adapted as they went on, which is something I don't think we've really seen them do. They've generally stuck to the game plan, stuck to their system, and eventually it's come good. Or at the very least, like, they've been out on their feet, but they put in a solid performance for the first 60. Really interesting. It's the first time I think I've seen them like properly go like, no, we've got a better way of playing today. We need to do something different. I thought that was a really interesting note, looking into New Zealand in a couple of weeks' time.
It makes you take them a little bit more seriously as knockout.
Not that we weren't, but
no. But
there's a little bit of like, they have played the same game plan consistently, and we talked in the preview that I think they beat the Black Ferns a season too early, almost. That they kind of had this thing of like, where they should be is competing with the Black Ferns regularly, and then they eventually win one here or there. Instead, they beat them on the first one of those games which should be competitive, and suddenly it now sets an expectation that they should be beating them every time. And I think really they like have played the same game plan consistently.
Yeah.
They probably do in order to like build as a team, develop like a plan C.
Sure.
Because there's kind of plan A, and we saw plan B today, which came out in chunks against teams like Wales and Italy in the Six Nations.
Thing is, they also have like the maul and the scrum, which they used.
But I think
quite
that's
well
part of
against
plan
Japan.
A.
Yeah.
We saw signs of them growing in terms of the way they played the game, which I thought was really interesting.
Feeding Costigan, feeding Baven Parsons on the wings.
Yeah.
Both really exciting players who had excellent games. And it is great that we're getting to see these players for what their talents are rather than them moulding around this team. So it's really exciting. And obviously the likes of McGann still yet to come back into the team. It's super exciting from an Irish perspective.
And McGann got 20 minutes off the bench.
Yeah.
Was as dangerous as you can be in 20 minutes where you don't see much of the ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this Irish team are, again, I don't think they're necessarily big contenders for this World Cup to win it.
Sure.
But you can look at that team and you can go like, oh, this World Cup feels like it'll be one that you look back on if they do achieve something great in 4 years' time.
Sure.
And go like, it all began there.
Yeah.
This was their first World Cup game in 8 years, right? We forget that.
They've got some making up to do, for sure. Realised as well, France v Italy, very quickly.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about France v Italy.
Yeah, talk about France v Italy. So that was such a weird game.
Yeah.
The last one, it was my least favourite game to watch as a spectator of round one, but that was more because all the other games,
Despite
like
the fact it was the
standards been
tightest
so high.
game.
Yeah. But I was a little bit disappointed with Italy not getting any points on the board.
Okay. This was a game that was destined to be played at 2 p.m. and it was played at 8 p.m. instead.
Yes.
Just a disappointment there. This game should have been played in desperate sunshine and it should have Pauline Bourdon-Sansus playing. But we can't help either of those factors. Neither of them came and whatever. Chambon was excellent. France, I think, are a fundamentally flawed team, right? Which is they have all the talent in the world and they have actively, as we talked about in the preview, David Ortiz said he's got rid of structure. He wants this team to play without any structure. And look, they've still got a little bit, like it's minimal amount of structure.
Yeah.
But like you will find amateur teams playing with more structure than France do.
Definitely.
And that's a problem. That's a bad thing. You compare that to how Gautier's team plays on the men's side, right? And they have set structure. They're just willing to break it and
in order to
break
create unstructured scenarios. That's why they do it.
And so I thought this France team just looked like a mess.
Yeah.
And their talent is so much more than that. And look, the Six Nations, they look like a mess, but Bourdon-Sansus dragged them through it. I thought Chambon had an individually very good game, but she's not cohesively tying the rest of the team together around her in the way Bourdon-Sansus kind of reluctantly, you can almost feel like going like, right, get on my back, come on, we're going over there.
I don't think you can say it's a coincidence that France spent the first 25 minutes just knocking on the door. They had so much possession, did nothing, then they score on first phase off a line-out a minute later.
Yeah.
And you look at this, like the setup is really, really nice. The way that they target Silare at 13 for Italy here, sending Tiane Felleur from an extremely wide position just to turn her slightly inwards, getting Vernier to carry outwards. So at that point, Stefanine and Marini are both sat on their heels going like, what have we got here? And just loading everything in terms of decision-making onto Silare and outside. And she is a great player, but has no gas in that 13 channel and gets completely done on the outside by Grisey, who goes the whole distance. That as soon as France actually think about this and go, how do we get our big carriers against smaller, lighter women, lighter tacklers, and how do we get our faster players against slower players? Like it's so basic, but it was so frustrating watching such a brilliant France team just scratching their heads a lot and going like, how do we find what the optimum level of getting over the line is? I just find it really confusing to watch.
How many times do we see the Calfuris of the world, their kind of biggest carriers, carrying straight into the Tunisi's, you know? Carrying consistently straight into their biggest players?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a level of that because as a defence you want to mark that up, right, accordingly. But France just felt like, I don't know, they're just not thinking about the game and it's incredibly frustrating to watch. They are, however, kicking a lot of penalties and I thought that was suspicious.
Yeah.
They only scored the 3 tries, which may prove to be an issue down the line.
Sure.
Because, I mean, look, we don't know what the bonus point situation is going to look like, but if South Africa have a chance to cause an upset against Italy, or Italy could blast past both the other teams.
They're such a hard team to read at the moment, Italy.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible that France live to regret this and, I don't know, and end up second in the group or something. I think it's entirely possible things slip.
You mentioned them taking penalties there.
Yeah.
Another interesting note on that was this penalty early in the second half that Bourgeois steps up to take, right? So she misses this. It falls just short. but I couldn't help but notice it's still a superpower because look how much territory France gained from this and how difficult it is for Italy to exit. They're in midfield, which is the hardest place to exit from on your own try line because you're the furthest from both touch lines, that you've got to pick a side to attack at. You've got to risk going through a couple of phases in order to actually get somebody in the pocket or, you know, to get your 9 into a position where she can physically get to the touch line. And typically you can read which way they're going depending on the footedness of the kicker.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I can't help but feel like from a French perspective, that adds an extra layer onto why them kicking penalties is such an overpowered thing, that Bourgeois' boot on penalties is so much bigger than anybody else in women's rugby, other than maybe Emma Singh. Emma Singh's probably on par with her, right? But yeah, and potentially outweighing any potential clearance kickers there. And obviously she's making an honest attempt at goal, so it's not bad. But also, like, it's not the end of the world if she misses.
Do you want a stat, though?
Go on.
That is the first penalty Morgan Bourgeois has missed in her international career.
That's crazy. And yet, that it was still a good thing.
Yeah. And they still made a gain off it.
Yeah.
Similar gain to probably if they had just kicked down the line.
Exactly. That's the thing. So I think that opens up an extra avenue to what makes France unique, especially when we go to knockout rugby.
Yeah.
And France looked so undercooked in that game. They did not look at their best at all. However, I think I might just be like traumatised from watching French rugby for decades now. But I just don't think you can ever categorise them as one thing. You know, if they get to a knockout game, they might have a big game in them.
That's it. I think France have one big game in this tournament. And in some ways for them, it's probably good they didn't have it first up against Italy.
Sure.
The biggest team in the pool. There is a realistic worry they have against Brazil. And they score 100 plus points against Brazil for no reason.
It'd be hilarious to last.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't put that past them either.
Yeah.
I just think this France team reminds me of like a 2016 French men's team.
Yeah.
You know, just like, there is talent there to be so much better, but they're just doing nothing. They look so badly coached. You know, obviously, Gaël Mignot, I think, great forwards coach, and that was what won the game, right? Italy couldn't get into the game because their forwards were completely out-muscled, couldn't get anything scrum, maul, line out, like physicality-wise. We saw like Taufui, etc., just carrying straight into Italy's biggest hitters. But also, equally, right, we saw the entire French lineup just like repelling Italy on forward carries.
Yeah.
And every now and again, they managed to get a Dienka or a Muzzo into space, and they made a couple of like really great breaks. But that was all Italy had going for them, was a couple of breakaways. And if you're able to grind out 24 points through kicking penalties, and through them all, and through the odd bit of bullshit from, you know, Grise, etc., then you are going to end up 24 points, right? And if your opposition aren't getting over the gain line because your pack is so dominant and so strong, then you are going to win the game, right? And you're probably going to win it by, if not 24 points, then by 17.
Okay.
And I think France look incredibly badly coached, but Mignot, despite being the co-head coach, is kind of innocent in this.
I get
it. I think she's doing her bit. David Ortiz's bit, which is backline structure and overall tactics.
I have no fucking clue what he's doing in that.
What's he doing? What's he doing? Well, apparently what he's doing is saying, yeah, don't worry about it, lads.
Yeah, just turn up and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, don't worry, Pauline will take care of it.
You say they remind you of a French 2016 men's team. Are you trying to tell me that Manon Bijot is Guillaume Guirado in disguise?
It's Benjamin Kaiser in disguise. They're going to do like standing and very funny commentary.
Are you telling me there's a chance that Yionel gets the recall?
This is what we need. I mean, Caroline Drouin is kind of the female Yionel.
Or Yionel's wife, but you know, who's actually a French international.
It's true.
But regardless, Caroline Drouin, the female Yionel, is going to have an inexplicable recall, having not played international 15-a-side rugby since the last World Cup. It's going to happen, and she's going to try a back heel in a quarter-final.
Make it happen.
Make it happen.